meet my bride. Let's go for a ride in my newfangled automobile. Just where we will go, nobody knows, but it's sure a great way to feel. Behind the wheel of the speed meter steel, it's my newfangled automobile.
Hello and welcome to Vintage Car History. I'm Wild Bill. Now, while I was writing the recent special on gasoline, I thought to myself, somebody's going to ask about diesel fuel. Now, diesel engines didn't make it to production cars until 1935, but for many decades prior to that, the diesel had a profound impact on many industries. Shipbuilding and design, stationary engines, commercial trucks, farm equipment, military vehicles, construction machines. It's a long list. So today we're going to take a look at the life and career of one of the most influential inventors of the modern world, Rudolph Diesel. Unlike most Germans, Rudolf was born in Paris, France in 1858, the middle child of 3 siblings. His parents had immigrated to France about a decade earlier, and his father, Theodore, was a bookbinder. In his early days, things were rather tight in the home, and young Rudolf worked in his father's shop as an assistant as well as a delivery boy. He attended a local church school where he proved to be very intelligent and an excellent student, winning local academic awards, and was poised to continue his education with much promise. In 1870, when young Rudolf was 12, the Franco-Prussian War broke out, and most people of German descent were deported from France. The Diesels wound up in London, and not long afterwards, his mother sent him back to the fatherland to complete his education. His uncle, Christoph, was a mathematics professor at the Royal County Vocational College and took over the responsibility of completing his education. 2 years later, he completed his primary education and did so with honors, and he had decided that he wanted to become an engineer. This didn't sit too well with his father, who wanted Rudolf to come home, get a job, and help support the family. Despite this, he enrolled in the Industrial School of Augsburg, where he excelled in his studies. After 2 years, he received a full scholarship from the Royal Bavarian Polytechnic of Munich, from which he would graduate, again with honors, with his degree in engineering in 1880. Rather than going to his family in London, he went back to Paris. One of his professors, Karl von Linde, owned a company there that manufactured ice machines. Rudolf had studied some thermodynamics, and Linde hired him to be an engineer for his company and to help develop new and improved refrigeration systems, themselves being an emerging technology at the time. Within a year, Diesel was the chief engineer at the factory and began to patent new processes for mechanical refrigeration. Yet, Rudolf had a soft spot in his heart for both engines and small businesses. He saw the massive factories that dotted the landscape, most being powered by huge and unthinkably expensive steam engines. The common man had not the means to build such facilities, but if they could be manufactured and correspondingly much less expensive, perhaps small factories could be built using less people and less money to get going. A relatively small engine that can still produce lots of power would be a game changer for many entrepreneurs with great ideas just needing an affordable opportunity. Keep in mind that a steam engine requires steam, which requires a boiler of some kind and lots of fuel and space to house the boiler and produce the steam. An internal combustion engine just needs the engine alone and a fuel source, which is a lot easier to build and manage as long as you have a good supply of fuel. However, as Nicholas Otto discovered, the fuel oils of the time were a very low octane and just couldn't compress enough to make for a really powerful engine. Thus, in Otto's case, new fuel was needed. Rudolph Diesel took a different approach to the problem. In 1890, he went back to Berlin to continue working at the Linde Ice Machine Company and their branch located there. But while at his job, he began to experiment with engines in his spare time at his own machine shop. Over the next few years, he experimented with a number of concepts, even a solar-powered compressed air engine, which didn't work, until he came up with his magnus opus, the diesel engine. Rudolf was both a master of engineering and of thermodynamics, and such a combination was indeed rare. He applied both disciplines to the problem of low-octane fuel control. Mind you, in the mid-1890s, gasoline wasn't being produced in serious quantity, but kerosene and fuel oil had been for decades and were readily available in bulk. This made the stuff cheap to buy, and if an engine could use those fuels efficiently, said engine would be perfect for the individual craftsman wanting to make his own small factory. So his engine could use the low-octane fuel. Here's the basic idea. Unlike Otto's four-stroke engine that compressed a mixture of air and fuel and then ignited it, Diesel's engine just compressed the air. And once it's nice and squished, then inject the low-octane fuel. It would immediately ignite under the sudden pressure, and off you go. The system was extremely efficient and produced planet-pulling torque. Thus, in 1893, the diesel engine was born. Over the next few years, the engine was refined even further, and by 1900 was in full production. They did create high pressures, and thus the engines were built in very robust fashion, which kept them from being used in cars until advances in metallurgy made them practical for auto use in the mid-1930s. Yet the engine Rudolph Diesel created revolutionized countless industries and was, and indeed still is, the engine that powers the industrial world. Thanks for watching Vintage Car History, and we'll see you next week. Peace.